The season is over. It is time to hand out the end of season report card. We're going to sit here, we're going to judge how the Celtic players got on this season, and I'm joined by Stephen and Melly.
Yes, Cameron, the season is over, folks. Time to reflect on it.
The season is over. Why don't you wait until next season begins again?
Why don't you record all-encompassing podcast / video about how the players... That song needs work, I think, yeah.
So why don't you just take some time, Stephen, to explain what it is we're bloody doing here?
Right, so something of a tier builder that we're going to do. A tier list... forcing all the players into categories on how we feel they performed over the course of the season. Yeah. So it follows on from a previous piece of content that we delivered halfway through the season. We did a mid-season report card where we divided the players up into 4 categories, and those were as follows. Astonishingly brilliant, and they're all based on managers' quotes, famous Celtic manager quotes. So astonishingly brilliant,
top of the class,
top tier, the absolute standouts. And now that we know where the season went, the destination of the season, we can basically narrow that down to the main players here, the main characters and who helped deliver that double. Underneath that was right good teammate, which is, of course, the Gordon Strachan quote from back in the day. Yeah. How we would break that down is probably guys who contributed, maybe just below the top tier, but guys who definitely contributed into delivering the double. Underneath that,
bitterly disappointing.
Of course, Neil Francis Lennon's quote. Yes. Self-explanatory, really. A bit meh, could have been better. Maybe the season didn't quite work out for them. Maybe they were injured a lot. Maybe they just didn't deliver upon previous promise. We'll get into it. And right at the very bottom, BrendanRodgers himself, Terminado. Yep. They've got to go. They've got to go. They delivered nothing throughout the season, and now they've got to go.
Now, naturally, if you disagree with any of this, there's comment section at the bottom. You can get involved.
Yes.
Martin Melly, why don't you just explain for a little bit what this is I've got draped over my shoulder, because the people will want to know.
I know, I was hoping you'd just go through the whole thing and just not mention it. But that is, of course, the Tony Ralston Award for Unexpected Excellence. Every season, for the past 3 seasons at our live show, we have dished out the awards. So we've got Player of the Year, Young Player of the Year, which we adapted a wee bit at the end of this season. And we've, of course, got the Tony Ralston Award for Unexpected Excellence. We brought in under Andrew's first season when we needed that sort of other award for players who have done well. And we came up with the Tony Ralston Award for Unexpected Excellence.
Heavy. Let me just put this on the floor.
Tony Ralston, of course, won that one. Aaron Moy won the following year, and this season
is a secret. No spoilers unless they've not listened yet. So what we've got here is, who knows when this will be out? It'll probably be rolling months later.
The live show's out there now, but...
So what I've got here beside me is a list of all the players who played this season, including big list, including the new January signings. We're going to go through each player and we're going to just have a bit of chat about him and decide where he fits in the scheme of things that Stephen's already explained. And obviously, I'll let you know where he was in January so we can compare. I think the fun's in the comparison. Yeah. Where we thought they were doing in January.
Did they go up or down?
Yes.
Yeah. Did their stock rise or fall? Was it stonks or not?
Yeah.
And I think you've done it a little bit of disservice by saying you have the list beside you. What you have beside you is the patented 20-minute Tim supercomputer, which is going to spit out the players at random. We're not going to go through in position. We don't know which players are coming first.
And in that, Melly, the supercomputer has spat out Daizen Maeda, first of all, who... For those who listened in January and those who need a reminder, he was a right good teammate in January. So that's third and the second in the class.
Yeah, second.
That's effectively a B.
Ah, right. So I could keep him there, but I think towards the end of the season, I would maybe push him up into astonishingly brilliant, because I think we've seen that James Tavernier is completely nullified apart from set pieces when Daizen Maeda's there. And in that brief period where Celtic were getting themselves right back into this title race and we thought Daizen Maeda was going to be out for the rest of the season, it was a big blow. And for a guy to come back from a hamstring injury within a couple of weeks...
a season ender.
Absolutely astonishing. You could say astonishingly brilliant.
Stephen, so we're looking at the players' whole season now.
Yeah.
We're taking the whole season, now that we've got the benefit of that, and we're grading them. And I think you are pushing it slightly to say Daizen was astonishingly brilliant, because as we've said before on the podcast, now no disrespect, Melly,
no,
but we've said
a lot taken.
That top tier You really only want 3 or 4 players in there max.
I've de-charmed myself thinking
There
about
you
it
go.
because we're looking at Daizen Maeda recently. You've got the eye test where you see exactly what it does, and you can go, the stats don't show you that, but then you see he got like 6 goals all season. You're like, is that enough? So I think I've put him back down.
I think you're both sensible there, because the last thing we want to do here is cheapen this process.
Yeah, of
we
course.
cannot, simply cannot do this. Now,
People
of course,
are relying on this.
of course.
BrendanRodgers is he's not
And anyone who's seen us do one of these before will be aware that within about 10 players, 10 examples, we will completely run or lose the run of our own logic here, and we'll be arguing that the sky is green here. But to kick us off, I think you're both right. I think it's right good teammate. I think he massively contributed, but isn't one of those properly elite performances of the season, of which, as you say, Jamie, can only be 2 or 3.
I can't disagree. The players are on tenterhooks waiting to see what happens here. So Daizen Maeda, right good teammate. I think that's more than fair. Next up, though, you'll love this. Callum McGregor. Now, can you guess where January was, what we thought Callum McGregor's season was like in January, Stephen?
Oh, well, I reckon there are probably quite a lot of harsh judgments dealt out in January by us, given how the season was going at that point. So I reckon he was probably in right good teammate.
No, he was bitterly
Was he?
disappointing in January.
Disappointing, okay.
Bitterly disappointing. But as the season's gone on now, I think, and we'll bash it out here as we discuss it, but I think Callum McGregor belongs in that elite 3 or 4. I think he went sky high from January onwards. He dragged this team through the double. Especially in some of these league performances, I thought Callum McGregor was exceptional.
I think you're right. I think he is one of the defining factors in the uptick in the form towards the end of the season. Now, I suppose if you're talking about the whole season, it's probably not his personal best.
No.
But he delivered when it mattered for Celtic. And it's a thing we might say quite a few times tonight, that people stepped up when it mattered, maybe at the expense of others who couldn't get the job done. But Callum McGregor coming back into the team, and again, this is a guy, much like both of these guys so far have been out for the season so many times. It was incredible. So Callum McGregor was out for the season about 3 times during the season, and he kept coming back and kept fighting for his place.
He absolutely will not stop.
Yeah, that's it. So I can't disagree. I think it's a very early placing for an astonishingly brilliant, but I can't disagree with it.
Yeah, I'm the same, because even though, like Stephen said, it wasn't his best season, even though he was out a lot of times and his season was written off.
Struggled a wee bit as well when he came back. Struggled for fitness. Remember that just sort of low period, maybe just after he came back?
I'm glad the Daizen Maeda one came up first, because it made me think, right, don't dive in and just go, what happened at the end of the season counts for the rest of the season. But with Callum McGregor, if he had have been out around that time when he was rumoured to be out for the rest of the season, I need to ask myself, would Celtic have won the league and the cup without him? No is the answer. Yeah. So, has to go in that top tier for me.
First entrant into the top tier, astonishingly brilliant, Callum McGregor. He absolutely will not stop. What was that quote from? Name that film.
White Chicks.
No, Stephen. It was your second favourite film, Getting Even with Dad. No, I'm kidding on. It was Dunstan checks in. No, really, it's a quote from Kyle Reese from the Terminator.
Oh, right, of course.
And we don't have our first Terminado yet, Martin Melly. But right beside me on the supercomputer is written one name, and that name is Alejandro Bernabé.
Another man that... Right, so Celtic went into January needing a left back while Bernabé was still there. They came out of January not signing a left back to real dismay from us and most Celtic fans. They still had Bernabé, and in March, BrendanRodgers decided Bernabé was not worth having for a run-in, so decided that he would go from March to the end of May with one left back in the whole squad. I think that tells its own story. I think the fact that he has struggled in his loan spell. I don't think he started in 11 of the 14 games he's available. I might be wrong on that, but I've seen a quote about that recently. So, Terminado.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah. So apt you said it twice.
Is he the most Terminado player we've got on here for you, Stephen?
I think so. It's fairly obvious. Melly's already detailed it fairly well. He was let go because he was deemed of no value to a very, very tight title race. And
he was Terminado in January as well.
Is that where we had him? Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. I'm not going to waste anyone's time here. He is absolutely Terminado. He has to go. He's got to go. But chances are he will be back because the other team don't want him either. So, but it's one of those weird loans where it's outside of Europe, so their season ends in winter. So he'll probably come back to us in December or something like that. So it's really odd.
To me, the longer he's away, the better. Rather than have him just haunting the place, not really performing. And it's quite often people say, well, these guys never had a chance. You never got an opportunity to look at them, Melly. But we've seen lots of Bernabei. I mean, he got as many games as he could probably hope to want. I mean, how many chances do you need to impress at the club? And it's never really happened for him.
No, there was a point last season where Greg Taylor got injured, and even then Celtic played right backs at left back. There was a point this season where Greg Taylor was injured and he was used, but he was useless. And it wasn't. He was coming in games, and you thought there was one decent game against Hibs away, and then he had absolute nightmares at places like Tynecastle in the past as well. The disaster towards the end of the previous season where he started at Ibrox, didn't he? And it's just, he's not good enough. He's never, ever going to be a Celtic player, no matter how many loans he goes out on. And we're just ticking off the years in his contract now.
Another one, Stephen. Benjamin Siegrist is next on the list. I see a lot of him on Instagram now. I think he's dating some Australian TV personality or something like that. And she's chronically online, and he's making more appearances on my Instagram feed than he has ever made for Celtic. Just to remind you, he was Terminado in January, and I don't think we're going to have any disagreement here.
Oh, can I shock you? So he swung all the way to an absolutely crucial play. Nah, he's not played, and even
barely made a bench. Has he?
I mean, even at the bare minimum here, what we expected or what we needed at the time was a guy to come in and hopefully challenge Joe Hart a bit. He's not even been able to challenge Scott Bain for a place on the bench. It is a complete failure of a signing. And I do appreciate that sub-goalkeepers or even third-choice goalkeepers, not much is expected of them, but even that incredibly low bar he hasn't met. So
and the fact of the matter is, I don't even think he was signed to be third choice.
No,
for all intents and purposes, he might have been signed to be first choice.
That's what I mean,
Definitely second choice, and then Scott Bain's ended up with a new contract this year, so I don't think there's many arguments to be had. The guy's Terminado, Mel, anything?
Definitely Terminado, and it's a guy you completely forgot about until you're like that watching the celebrations. Why is he up front? Up front in all the celebrations? So I get him out.
Okay, Terminado for Benjamin Siegrist, no argument there whatsoever. Next up, we're ripping through these Terminados because the next one is Lagerbielke, to quote Neil Lennon, Gustav Lagerbielke. I feel kind of sorry for Lagerbielke. Just another one of these bizarre summer signings, Stephen, who came in with a regional recognition from his own league. Did he win best Swedish defender in the league or something like that?
That came later. That came while he was at Celtic. He was sort of retroactively awarded that. I think because their season doesn't line up with theirs, so he was given the Defender of the Year or something like that.
Very peculiar. Comes with some sort of pedigree. Young player. Played a few games at the beginning. Never really panned out for him. I think, just having a wee look here, he was Terminado in January. I think it was pretty obvious Brendan wanted him out the club in January. We kept him then because Cameron Carter-Vickers got injured, so we killed that loan deal at the last minute. But the Terminado, I mean, it's Terminado now, isn't it?
I think since that loan, I think it was it to Lecce?
Yeah.
I think Serie A. So since that was scuppered, since that was kiboshed, to use some good old-fashioned tabloid patter about it, he's only played once. I think that it was the time where took off a centre-half and stuck Iwata at centre-half. That was working out disastrously as well, so they had to take someone else off and stick Lagerbielke on as a, basically, not only like a fifth or sixth choice centre-half in the squad, a fifth or sixth choice centre-half in a game state. So, it's not worked out at all. It's a somewhat catastrophic signing, really, when you think about it, because he came in and not only has it not worked out, it was deemed that he wasn't going to work out within weeks of him joining the club. He was never fancied at all and never played really again past a certain point. So it's a terrible signing. I don't blame him for it because some sort of profound failure was made at the scouting level for that, to have signed a guy who doesn't fit the physical profile of what BrendanRodgers wanted. They still signed him and didn't realise he was slow as a week in the jail until he was actually on the pitch. Is unforgivable. So with regret, he is not worked out and he's 100% Terminado.
Yeah, I think he's the poster boy for this sort of, if they can say what's happened to the Celtic transfer model, what is it, and you just go him and you go right, okay, because BrendanRodgers spoke about Nawrocki recently when he said, look, he was going to come in as backup third choice to Starfelt and Carter Vickers, and you're right, that's fine, that sort of profile. But for that to be the case, that means that Lagerbielke was deemed to be the guy to come straight in there in my eyes, and he's looked absolutely honking terrible. So slow, and it's just the poster boy for this disastrous transfer committee or whatever it is that Celtic do this way, and it's just one of those ones that, how can you get it so wrong?
Yeah.
So wrong that this guy just doesn't fit the bill. So Terminado, for me, the only thing I can say for him is at least he's got Feyenoord and he looks quite good with hair now.
He does, and he's put on a bit of beef as well.
Yeah.
He's bulked up a little bit. So he's sadly, for Gustav, his season is bottom of the class.
Terminado's racing it in the lead here.
It really is.
Let's see if it stays
really
that way.
is. We've got next up Martin Melly, though. You talk about Celtic signing policy, another summer signing is next being plucked out of the supercomputer. It's Paulo Bernardo.
Ooh.
He was bitterly disappointing in our January review. We've reached the end of the season now. Is he shifted up or down? There's talk, actually, that we're probably trying to sign him now. If you're listening to this on Patreon, you're getting it early. But if you're listening to it on YouTube, you're getting a wee bit late, Melly. So by the time the YouTube punters listen, the name might already be on the dotted line. So yeah, would you have him? Would you keep him? How do you rate him?
Yeah, I think we're right at the start of June right now, so just to give some context. So I think there's chat about him. I think I would maybe put a case towards him being Terminado in the January, because I just didn't see, he did all right in the Champions League, but then didn't show up. Then he had that sort of good spell. But I think now I'm torn with this one, because I think I've seen things that I like about him, but I also seen things like against the smaller teams he wasn't very good. So I think I have reached the conclusion that, you know what, I don't care if it was just in the cup final. He made a difference, and he made a difference in the big games against Rangers. So I would put him in right good teammate, just getting in there.
It's a tricky one, this, isn't it? Yeah, it's a tricky one to make, kind of logic of, because he fell away quite a good bit in the second part of the season. Hasn't really contributed massively, but as you say, he made the difference in the cup final, and that's really what we're sitting here to talk about, is who affected the season in positive ways and who didn't. Bernardo has done at times. I think clearly Astonishingly Brilliant is written off straight away. He's not Terminado.
No.
Because Terminado, despite the fact he might leave, that suggests to us that, or to the logic of this, that we want rid of him. That's not the case either. But I think there's potential there to get better. Now, I know he's not particularly young. He's not like 19 or anything like that. But what I mean by get better is that I can picture a world where, with greater responsibility, say for example, Matt O'Reilly leaves, right, as many people expect him to, I could see him getting better with an increased role within the team, kind of like Matt O'Reilly did behind Tom Rogic when he left.
There's so much perception about these signings, isn't there? Because if I said to you, for example, Odin Thiago Home, the perception is he was maybe signed not to play every week, signed to develop, signed to turn into a player. And there's probably people watching this or have watched Celtic this season that think, give Home another season, see what happens.
Yeah.
And then I say the name of you, Paulo Bernardo, and there's a perception that he was signed to play right away, to contribute right away, to hit the ground running, to maybe feature regularly in the midfield. But there's people who have kind of not made their mind up on the guy yet, and they're a bit lukewarm on them. But both those guys are, for all intents and purposes, the same age, and we loaned one and paid money for the other. And it's just that there's a lot of perception about it. If Odin Thiago Home had performed anywhere close to if we were getting Bernardo performances out of Home, people, I think, would be raving about Home, saying, where have we uncovered this young player? And I think there's definitely an element of perception about the way that we view these players. So Bernardo, for me, I think in the back of your mind, you're like £6 million. And I think there's a condition that goes on with Celtic, and it is the case with Celtic, but not out in world football. You're like, God, that's a lot of money for him. But out with Scotland, £6 million is nothing for a footballer.
Yeah.
It's literally, there's no many clubs that whose major summer investment would be, if we signed him, he would be one of maybe the second or most expensive player we signed this summer. There's no many clubs still operating at that sort of level.
No, but he would be one of 3 of 6 million is the most we've ever paid for a midfielder.
Yeah.
And when we were buying guys like that, Berkovic didn't work out, but he was proven quality. Neil Lennon
How did he make it into this?
Wow.
Berkovic, what a reference.
it was a mainstay, so we don't really buy midfielders at that price much, so you're wanting somebody to come in and be the guy that comes in and plays, and I don't know if Bernardo's going to be that, but hey, we need to move with the times, and other players will look at and go, right, maybe they contributed, maybe they didn't. He's got a couple of assists against Rangers and a goal against Rangers, so that pushes him up a wee bit.
I mean, there's also the question, if you don't need to look that far back to the likes of Berkovic and Neil Lennon signings, you can say, well, in recent years, £6 million has got us Cameron Carter Vickers and Jota.
Yeah.
So that's the quality level that you're sort of expecting for £6 million. And I think that's fair enough. For me, I think Bernardo's not been astonishingly brilliant. No way. He's not been, I mean, bitterly disappointing. I wouldn't say, if someone asked me how did Bernardo's season go, I wouldn't go, it's been bitterly disappointing, because at the end of the day he was on loan.
Yeah.
So I don't want people to get too bogged down into the terminology we're using here. Is he a third tier player or is he a second tier player for Celtic? I think in all honesty he's maybe a third tier player.
I think I agree with that. Again, look, it's a novelty, it's a gimmick. The quotes we've attributed here. It's not to be taken literally. He has not been bitterly disappointing. Some players who make it into that tier will literally have been bitterly disappointing. But in this case,
we'll let you know which ones.
Yeah, right, yeah. But in this case, it's just we're not sure. It's a wee bit meh. Has done good things, has done some okay things. I think he's perfectly suited to the third tier of this, which is bitterly disappointing, unfortunately. But I can see him getting better.
Yeah.
I can.
Would you sign him?
Yeah, I would. I would just now, yeah, to be honest. I think I can see him having a big role in the team next season. Again, we don't know what's going to happen just yet as we sit here recording this. But if he were to return to the club, then I could see him playing a big role. But looking back on this season, it's just passed, just been okay.
Bitterly disappointing for Paulo Bernardo. Next up, though, Melly, I think you're going to really like this name. Let me just remind myself. Oh wait, it says Phillips here, but I don't remember any guy ever playing for Celtic called Phillips.
Nacho Phillips. Oh Jesus! I'm so. I think we said Terminado in January, didn't we?
We did. Yeah. Terminado in January,
and thankfully we got Terminado in January. An absolute disaster, and it kind of feels like that was another season that he was here. Just didn't work out. Terrible. Up there with Shane Duffy. Shocking. Absolutely shocking.
Stephen, you don't really hear the word bomb scare to describe Celtic defenders anymore. And a lot of people use it like out of context. But I mean, Nat Phillips for me was a bomb scare.
Oh, I mean, that performance away to Kilmarnock was absolutely catastrophic. Did he actually get an own goal in that one? Yeah. One of the enduring images of the kind of low parts of this season was him chasing the ball into his own net. So, I mean, like, there's no other way to put the cancellation of a season-long loan, or was it? No,
it was only a short term, wasn't it? It was just a 6 month.
So the non-picking up of a longer-term loan when we kind of needed players in January,
because Carter Vickers was injured, and we decided to send him back and keep.
Yeah. So on the bare facts of it, he was a guy much like Bernabe, was deemed of no value, of no worth to the second part of this season. Now I know Liverpool might have had the final say in that anyway, but I really don't see them.
Do you think
Klopp
wanted him?
Maybe we fought tooth and nail to get him back to the second half of the season. Jurgen Klopp said, absolutely not. I cannot let. I mean, I don't know where he's been since.
Cardiff tumble.
Oh, is he back at? Whoa, wow, what a side they must be to watch. But no,
pace for days in that team.
Terrible. Nat Phillips is one of the worst defenders I've seen this century at Celtic. I can't really remember anything worse.
Terminado.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought you were going to say he's one of the worst defenders I've seen at Celtic this season.
Top 5.
Sit down, be humble, Odin Thiago home. You were bitterly disappointing in January, and Melly sitting here today at the end of the season, that seems, frankly, generous.
Yeah, Terminado. I suppose you could say give him a loan and see how he does, but if I'm looking at Celtic this summer, I'm thinking, right, do you know what? See if we brought in another midfielder. If Matt O'Reilly goes, we might switch up and go for a number 10 or a number 6, which again pushes him further down. There's chat of Bosun Lowell coming back and him getting a shot in there. So just don't see where it's. A lot of people have seen him and said, I can see a player in there. I haven't seen anything. So I would,
barely had the chance. He's hardly featured.
That tells its own story as well, doesn't it? Considering the injuries Celtic had, I asked you, Stephen, on a recent Breakfast of Champions, how many centre-backs, midfielders and wingers Celtic have used. The amount of players Celtic have used this season is incredible.
I forgot home to finish off that story. He asked me to name all the midfielders and I completely forgot about home.
So I just don't see where all of a sudden a guy who's not played for a season is going to come back and be brilliant. So Terminado for
I
me.
would like to remind people though, Stephen, of this alternative universe that exists, because Thiago Holm is another player that I believe came with some sort of award from the Norwegian League.
Yeah.
Highly rated young player, comes to Celtic and just can't make the breakthrough at all, which was just quite surprising to me, because when he first started, BrendanRodgers spoke about he liked him, he's a good player, he just needs to work on his upper body strength, and he pinpointed that. So it suggests to me that maybe it's not the talent letting some of these players down, it's some of their physical attributes and potentially some of their application in the side, and I'm sure we'll come to that when we talk about another couple of players. But the home one, to me, it's just looked like another failed signing, and it's as reluctant as I am, it's Terminado. He doesn't look as if he's got any future at the club already.
Yeah, I didn't want to get too into it before we got to home, but it turns out he came up pretty quickly afterwards. But you made a good point about the various perceptions of players across the squad, and there's no reason that a guy his age can't have some sort of impact at Celtic. Some of Celtic's best players of the last decade have been around his age. It's just that we treat these guys with... we treat them with kid gloves until they prove themselves otherwise. And other people are willing to give them season after season. No, he needs a loan, he needs this, he needs to put on a bit of upper body strength. That's not the easiest thing in the world to do either. That could take years to do for a guy who's already 20, probably fighting against genetics. He might just be a pretty light guy naturally. So it's not like you can just go away and choose to do that and all of a sudden you'll be a player. He would have to work at that for months on end.
Do you know what he can do about it, Stephen?
What?
See, when Celtic are playing, not be in Monaco. He could
be
watching the game.
I mean, in recent, what game was that? There was a game coming up, wasn't there? And he wasn't even in Scotland at the time. So that, I mean, if you're getting that sort of time off training during the season, it tells you everything you need to know.
And see, with what's just happened towards the end of the season, the way BrendanRodgers had to manage the team and bring back various players. So I won't go into any particular names because we're going to have to talk about these players later on. But the way BrendanRodgers had to change things, he had to drop others in order to get success for this season. I'm really not in the mood for any of this there's a player in there stuff. I think that players have failed miserably this season, and it showed with how little they were trusted towards the end of the season. We've already spoken about a couple like Bernabei and Phillips who were just gone from the club, but the way that BrendanRrodgers had to bring in some guys to get the job over the line, I think they failed, and I don't really see any point in going into a summer where we all like the sound of a bit of a rebuild, but yet we keep all these guys around who might do something in the future, who might improve, who might... Can you stick with Holm for the next 2 years, hoping that he puts on a bit of upper body strength and hoping he develops into a player? Or could you just get somebody better right now who is all of those things for a little bit of expenditure, a little bit of investment out there? That's the way I'm inclined to look at the squad now.
So Holm is sliding down from bitterly disappointing to Terminado.
Yeah.
Kwon's up next, Stephen. Another one of the January signings. We had him down... Summer signing, sorry. We had him down in January as Terminado, for those that watched back then. Terminado for Kwon. He went out on loan, was it in January?
Yep.
He went out on loan to St Mirren. St Mirren were quite impressed with him, quite physical. As far as I understand it, got himself into a lot of sort of, not so much sendings off, but tailings off, bother, bookings, because he was very, very aggressive on the pitch, aggressive in the tackle. Apparently he's one of the players that BrendanRrodgers actually does see something in. But in January, as I said, we had him down as Terminado. But I think the problem he's got, Melly, is that the Celtic midfield is a very competitive environment. There's only 3 spots really up for grabs, and we've got a lot of players in there. And, I mean, we need a real summer of upheaval for all the pieces to move around the chessboard, which would then see Kwon become second or third choice in his desired position. So I just don't really see a pathway for Kwon from Celtic to the first team. It looks to me like he's someone who we'll keep about, send on loan a couple of seasons, and then he'll end up signing for someone else. He's never going to make the impact for Celtic. For me, Terminado.
Yeah, Terminado for me. I think even if he did well on loan at St Mirren, fine. Is that going to be enough for Celtic? In that position, you've got Callum McGregor and you've got Iwata. Do I want to either keep Iwata or upgrade Iwata? Possibly. Do I see Kwon doing that? Not a chance. So like Stephen just said there, I've not got time for any of this. I've not got time. Celtic need to go out and get good players that will come in and make a difference to their team. Kwon's not going to do that for me. Terminado.
I'm definitely not against the idea of having a guy there who can come in and play maybe 8 games or something next season, who can pick up some minutes and give Callum McGregor a bit of a much needed rest, because Callum McGregor famously plays far too much football, and he's the wrong side of 30 now. Not that he's going anywhere, he's not finished by any means, but it's something you need to look after going forward. Someone who can pick up the reins from Callum McGregor a wee bit. Is Kwon that guy? Categorically, no. He's not going to be that. I mean, that sounds like I'm being really harsh. I've not seen enough of the guy to make that judgment, but of all the midfielders in the world who you would like to have as potential backup or help out to Callum McGregor, is Kwon the guy? I don't see that being the case. I really don't. I think even the most optimistic of fans would say, well, could we probably do better than a guy who's already 23, 24 on loan at St Mirren and previously came from a lower league in Korea? I'm not being disrespectful or disparaging to that. That's absolutely fine. But Celtic have plucked him from there, haven't been able to get anything out of him so far. By all accounts, he's been okay at St Mirren. They want to keep him again. But if he was to go to St Mirren again, that to me would suggest it's completely done at Celtic, because he's reaching the age where he should be playing for Celtic if he's going to ever. So now he's a Terminado. It's just one of those things that really hasn't worked out at all.
I think what you said there, by all accounts, I've not seen enough to make a judgment for a lot of these players, is the judgment, isn't it? Because we've long spoke about this season and how this is the poorest Celtic team that's won a league, and we just need quality. And if guys aren't getting into squads in this league, in this season, then that tells you all you need to know about them. And Kwon, for one's just one, didn't work out, was probably never going to work out.
So Terminado for Kwon. I think we need to be a bit more ruthless here.
Yeah.
How ruthless are you feeling, Stephen? Very. How's your...
Super ruthless.
How the trigger fingers?
I'm ready.
Because Mikey Johnston's up next. And he was Terminado in January, and now he's bobbing about. Mikey's putting his wee hand out. Stephen, rescue my Celtic career. And the water's just rising. Are you going to reach down and grab him, pull him out of the water?
Or whisper, no.
Yeah, you're going to push his wee stupid head under.
Yeah. Mikey Johnston reminds me of something you said a minute ago as well about Odin Thiago home, about some mad award he might have won in Norway, who knows, and about Lagerbielke having won the Swedish Defender of the Year, and about Iwata, who's fine, having won Japanese Player of the Year. I'm not that bothered about what they do at other clubs. I'm just not all that impressed by it.
Because Cardiff, and we'll get to David Turnbull, Cardiff took on Celtic's Player and Young Player of the Year, didn't they? And David Turnbull 1 year, so that shows you how much these awards are worth a lot of the time.
I mean, it's not nothing if Celtic are about to sign someone who has won some award. It's a curiosity to me. I'll go, oh, that's quite interesting. But it does not really dictate the overall quality of the player for this particular club. It just doesn't. And we've seen it so many times. So Mikey, how I'm relating this to Mikey Johnston is he has done very, very well for West Brom. He won Player of the Month at one point. But what I would say about that is people have been blown away by that impressive month he had, not so much recently.
Yeah.
So in the last 8 to 10 weeks of the season, I think he scored once, something weird like he'd scored 6 in 7 games very early on in his West Brom career, and then he scored 1 in the following 12 and was substituted in pretty much every single game, so no one talks about that. But that said, I don't want to be churlish about it. He did very well at the start, but I'm just not that bothered about it. I'm more concerned with the 7+ years he's had at Celtic, and that tells me, that paints more of a picture for me about what he's likely to do for Celtic going forward than a few months at West Brom. So I don't mean to be horrible about it. I'm just saying that Mikey Johnston hasn't worked out for Celtic at all. I think multiple managers have tried with him now. So Neil Lennon, BrendanRodgers now twice, and Ange Postecoglou have all had a go at this, and it's just not worked out for him.
Fact is, we're here to grade this season.
Yeah,
the purpose of it, and he was sent on loan again, Melly. And that tells you all you really need to know. And BrendanRodgers spoke at length about Mikey Johnston, and he came back from injury, I think, and got chances, and BrendanRodgers spoke about him. And not just what Stephen's saying, multiple managers have tried with Mikey Johnston, but it's always the same story with Mikey Johnston. Basically, buck up your ideas, and you're a talented young player. You were a talented player when you joined the Celtic first team and made your breakthrough, but you need to buck up your ideas if you want to keep playing. That is basically what every single Celtic manager has told Mikey Johnston. And BrendanRodgers eventually just shipped him out on loan. So we're grading this season He was sent out on loan. Nobody missed him. He played. He didn't contribute. Terminado, thank you, goodbye.
Yeah, Terminado, he got more opportunities this season than he has in the last few seasons. And what opportunities are a chance for you to impress? He did that once or twice, but also you get those stark reminders of what Mikey Johnston is. And that last 10 minutes when he came on against Rangers in the derby around the New Year was utterly disgraceful from a footballer.
Yeah.
Rangers' main player is James Tavernier, and he left him at least twice, causing Greg Taylor to nearly have a meltdown on the pitch at him. Disgraceful. And I don't like using those words like as if it's no really, but that was your one thing you have to do is come on and stop that guy doing what he's doing, and he couldn't even do that. He's had plenty of time. Can't say he's not had opportunities. Terminado, I'd only stick him in right good teammates, so West Brom take him, please.
That's another guy who was starting games and then was shipped out on loan as well.
Celtic get better by getting rid of players who were contributing in January.
Players who are starting games, so that's several we've had so far. Mikey Johnston, Bernabei, Nat Phillips, they were all starting games and then they were deemed as basically liabilities, surplus to requirements as soon as the January window opened.
And we're not being bitter about it. We're not being dicks about it. We're looking at how the guy contributed towards Celtic's season and he's bottom of the class, and it's really that simple.
That's it.
So, Terminado. I don't want to hear any argument about it.
Oh.
Right? Terminado for me.
On you go, mate.
Go and save the game for his son.
Who the hell is that?
Just don't give him 5 years, because then it becomes a big risk.
Rotten. The guy's not got it.
Wow.
He's not got it.